Well, hello friends. Welcome back to SerenityOS office hours. Hopefully this works. I'm live. All right. Kaka knows exactly what I'm looking for. All right. Didn't have to ask this time. Thank you so much for letting me know. Hello everybody. Hello Kaka, Paul, Surreal Egg, Dami Killer with the always with the, what are they called? The timestamps for the monthly videos. Dami Killer's just been killing it with those recently. Sup Daniel, Andy, Wither Productions, Johnny, V-Bits. So nice that we're all here. It is Friday, and we're going to do what we always do on Fridays, which is talk about SerenityOS and all of the surrounding projects. Timestamps for office hours when? Well, as we say on Discord, for the sin of when posting, this is now your job. What's up, Linus? By the way, before I say anything else, I just want to brag about Linus because as of today, I guess, he is an official member of the TC39 group, which standardizes JavaScript. He's part of JavaScript standardization now, and I'm super happy about this, super proud of Linus. The journey that we've all been on, and the journey that Linus has been on, learning C++ just so he could hack on libjs and then becoming an invited expert to the standardization committee is so cool, I think. Just super awesome. And it's so cool that now we have Linus representing our interests in TC39. So really looking forward to seeing what comes out of that. But yeah, major congrats to Linus. It's so cool. Yeah, so I guess now it's just a race to see who becomes the first person in the CSS working group or the W3C or whatever. All of those still open. But I think it's just a great indicator of the fact that we're making serious progress here. So, or the Unicode consortium, says Recha. That is actually a good point. Yeah, we do have people working on various parts of Unicode stuff, I suppose. Like we have Recha and all the folks doing emojis and like going really hard on that. And then we also have Tim, who's been doing the internationalization and time zone stuff. Although I don't know where all of that stuff fits into Unicode, but yeah, like if people are interested in joining standardization groups, then I think that is a fantastic thing if there's room for us, because if we're going to spend time implementing all these things, it's probably a good idea to get involved and try to steer how they are specified so that we can make life easier for ourselves as implementers. Anyway, KS says, I just watched the LiveOverflow videos on the kernel vulnerabilities again, and they're still very interesting. Has there been any more vulnerabilities that have popped up? If yes, where? So there haven't been any like big, splashy, flashy vulnerabilities in the system since over a year. Now, I'm sure that we have vulnerabilities. I'm sure we have bugs. You know, everybody knows we have bugs, but it's been a while since anybody sort of came at the system with this hackerman mindset to find and exploit bugs, and it's something I would love to get back to. I did a half-assed attempt to make people interested by increasing the bug bounty to $50 for exploitable bugs, but so far no takers. Of course, even historically, nobody ever wants the $50, or nobody ever wanted the bounty. Everybody just says, "Oh, this was too much fun. I can't take the money." But I don't know what to do. I don't have an infinite budget, so can't offer competitive bounties. Obviously, compared to somebody like Apple or Google. But yeah, it would be fantastic to see more exploitation of the system. And I think there's probably going to be interest in that now that we have a cross-platform browser happening as well, because that opens up a whole arena of like exploiting the browser on Linux or Mac or whatever, maybe even Android. So it remains to be seen what happens, but I'm optimistic that we're going to get owned sooner or later. And we'll see how that pans out. Michael says, has creating Ladybird created any unexpected complexity by needing to develop browser and Ladybird at the same time? Yeah, I mean, a little bit, yes, it has. The GUI parts of the two browsers, the GUI parts are still separated code bases. So we have the SerenityOS libGUI implementation for Serenity, and we have the Qt GUI for other platforms. And those are, for the most part, separate things, although I've made some effort to share some of the code. And we continue to make efforts towards that. And I mean, it's a little bit unclear at the moment how we're going to achieve it, but I think like the ideal end state, as far as I'm concerned, is that there's one Ladybird browser, and then there's sort of like a Qt GUI module and a SerenityOS GUI module, potentially other GUI modules like a Mac OS GUI module, a Windows GUI module, or whatever, but that they would sort of be submodules or subsystems of the of the same browser application. So not sure how we're going to get there, but it's not that much code. Like our UI is not that complex, so redesigning it to be somehow cross-platform friendly shouldn't be the biggest challenge in the universe, I will hope. Let's see. Sam Atkins says that the real bounty was the friends they made along the way. I guess so. No, I mean, I'm sure that there's a threshold value where if I bump the bounty to that dollar amount, then people will actually start caring and actually start seeking it. But I don't know exactly where that is, and I guess I'm a little bit scared that if I push it up too much and then suddenly it just unclogs a huge amount of interest, and then I've got 20 people with 20 unique exploitable bugs all wanting the bounty the next day. And yeah, so just going slow and cautious here. Andy says, I wonder how long before Ladybird gets entrusted a DRM decryption key for encrypted media extensions. That's probably going to take a moment or two. But it would be kind of nifty to one day be able to support stuff like, I don't know, who uses EME, like Netflix and things like that, I guess. I know that some people are, religiously opposed to DRM and things like that, but when it comes to like having a browser that supports some part of the web, if we have a choice where we can support more parts of the web, even if those are not the most palatable parts of the web, I feel like it still makes sense to do it. But obviously in this case, it's not up to us. So we're just gonna keep making progress, keep moving forward, and we'll see what happens along the way. Reha says that offering 2 million IRR sounds a lot better than $50 USD. What is IRR? Is that Iranian something? Iranian reals. Real. Okay, yeah, 2 million. 2 million, that does sound like a lot better. Thomas Q says, how is the sync between Ladybird's repo and the Serenity mono repo being done? I've heard of Git subtree, maybe it could help IDK. So right now they are just kind of manually synced, which is not great, but we have an ongoing PR that simply brings Ladybird into the Serenity monorepo. So it still needs a bit of love to get everything hooked up correctly, but Ali has been basically creating a commit for commit import of Ladybird into the monorepo, and that solves a ton of our problems and creates small set of new problems like how do we deal with CI, but it seems like technical problems we can solve. Let's see. The Undefined says, what's your thoughts on unsigned types should never been used in C++? So I guess, I mean, there's definitely a use case for unsigned types, and you need them to be able to represent stuff like bit masks, and you need it for wrapping arithmetic, which is used in all kinds of things. But it is true that unsigned arithmetic and unsigned types, they do create an issue where you have defined overflow, which means that it's harder to detect integer overflow because it's not undefined behavior. So I know that there's been like all this back and forth, and many people feel now that it was a mistake to have an unsigned size type, I guess, in C++, but I don't know what to think about it. I guess in my view, like I would rather avoid using size types whenever possible, and instead use like containers and iterators and spans, things like that. And but you know, it's a nuanced issue, and the other side of it is that when you have signed types, so if you use signed types for your vector size or your array size and things like that, then now you have to deal with the possibility of your size being signed in various cases, which you know, that can create all kinds of interesting security problems if you have bugs. And it's just like a different, you get a different type of bugs. So I'm not sure what I think about it. I don't think I have a mature opinion. I haven't thought about it enough, but we haven't been hit super hard by issues like that. At least not that I can remember. We've had some issues with like 32-bit unsigned overflows. Yeah, anyways, as you can tell from my my response, I don't really have a strong thought other than, yeah, I see some problems, but there are problems with signed types as well, and not sure what's better. Okay, so Devashish with the super chat saying, well, hello friends. Hello Devashish, nice to have you here. Thank you so much for the super chat. That is awesome. And congrats on getting a job a while back, by the way. That is also awesome. Let's see. Medsu says, have you considered a tool like Google's repo for combining multiple Git repositories into one mono project? We don't want to combine multiple Git repositories, I think, into one mono project. It's much, much nicer to have a single mono repo because of the atomic commits that gives us. That's primarily what, like in my view, that's like the big benefit of a mono repo, is that you can do everything atomically, and splitting it across multiple repositories takes away the one majorly awesome thing. YukiCat says, have you looked at std expected yet? It basically returns a value or error like the Rust result. I've been using it and it has been great. We use something similar in Serenity for years at this point. And it is indeed working great. We just have our own patterns around it. So the Serenity pattern is error or that we tend to use. So error or is either an error or some arbitrary t. But we also have or we at least used to have a result thing. Yes, we still have. So this one is very close to what Rust has with the result type. But in most cases, in Serenity at least, it just it's easier to use error or because you typically know that you're using a standard syscall error anyway. So this together with the try and must macros are the bread and the butter of our error handling techniques in Serenity. Let's see. Luigi says, hi from Germany. Is your distro still Ubuntu Mate? Looks awesome. Yes, it is still Ubuntu Mate. And I've been using it ever since I started making videos, although I have been rearranging the menus a little bit sometimes, but it's still the same old Mate. And I'm reasonably happy with it, although it does feel a little bit like every time I update Ubuntu, then something gets a little bit less stable. The most recent thing in Mate that got less stable is that sometimes Windows Z order stops working correctly, and some window just stays on top of everything else, even if I click on other windows, and then I have to go and kill all -1 Marco to restart the compositor, and then everything starts working again. And I don't know what's up with that. I don't know when it started, but it wasn't always like that. So that's a little bit weird. But like on the whole, I'm very happy with Mate. Thomas says that I skipped the question. Oopsie doopsie. Jan says, what are your thoughts on testing? I noticed that you always create small reproducer in your browser hacking videos, but you don't seem to commit them as automated regression tests. Why is that? It's because we don't have a framework for automated regression tests for the browser yet. But people are actively working on WebDriver right now, which when completed should allow us to run the web platform tests system, which is sort of the official test suite or test runner for browsers. So once that is up and working, then we will have a straightforward way to make sort of standard type tests. And at that point, we will definitely incorporate like a more test-centric or test-oriented workflow. But at the moment, it is still a little bit of a Wild West. And it's worked fine so far because there's just so much surface area in a browser that there's like we're expanding in so many directions at the same time that testing has not been like a huge pain point. But as the browser goes into a more mature phase and we start to like iterate and fix more of our systems, then it will definitely be beneficial to have testing. And I come from a long background in production quality browsers, or working on the major browsers where everything is unit tested. So I'm very familiar with the workflow, but it just never seemed to me like, that didn't seem to me like the type of workflow you want to have while you're sketching out a new browser, but rather something you would have once the architecture is in place and you're sort of switching into a more mature development phase on the project, I guess. So that said, I am excited for that phase to begin whenever that happens. Feels like it's coming up soon, actually. Let's see. That bastard over there says, what's your favorite technique for yakbaiting someone? That is a good question. I feel like if I reveal my favorite techniques for yakbaiting someone, then they're gonna be less effective because then people will call me out. Right now I have plausible deniability whenever I do my tricks. But I did yakbait somebody earlier today. I yakbaited Linus, but I told him to his face that I was yakbaiting him. I said, I've got some yakbait for you. And he accepted it. After some negotiation, of course. But it's not always upfront and explicit. So I'm going to pass on an exhaustive answer on that one. Richard says, are you running the latest LTS? If so, have you updated OpenSSL? I'm fully updated. Yes. MSCLRHD says, have you tried running the tests from the CSS and other specs to check conformance? By the way, I feel like I nailed your initials there. So we run various tests irregularly at the moment. I've run a ton of the various CSS conformance tests from the specs, and I've used them to sort of isolate and find problems that needed to be worked on. And once we start running WPT or web platform tests, then we will have sort of an automated workflow where all of these tests can run. So that's going to be super sweet. And there are tons and tons of CSS spec tests that don't pass at the moment, but it's not very discoverable, right? Once we can run them automatically, we can make a list, make a graph out of the list. And I have a feeling that once we put a graph to that, people are going to stream into it, because that is what happened with JavaScript. Like once we added a graph to sort of quantify the JavaScript spec compliance, then people got super hooked on trying to get the graph to go up. And yeah, I suspect the same thing will happen with CSS and DOM and HTML and all of these things that we will be able to test soon-ish. Matthew, member for 8 months. Thank you so much for the support. 8 months. Is it 8 months ago since I added the golden yak thing? Wow. Thank you so much for being a member the whole time. That's wild. Really appreciate that. B. Freddle says, good afternoon. It is great to see all the progress on the browser. I think so too. Today, I recently I've been doing this thing where I just mess around and like look for big modern websites and try to get them to work in the browser, and then post it on Twitter like, look, I got it working. And it's really fun. So today I got this one to look reasonably okay. The LA Times, which wasn't that much that needed fixing, just a small number of things. And there's still a bunch of problems here, of course, but it seems seems like stuff we can debug. These exclamation points are suspicious, for example. But yes, it is really fun to see the progress from my perspective as well. The Undefined says, have you worked on garbage collection before Serenity? Not really. I've worked on like patches to the garbage collector in JavaScript core, which is part of WebKit, but I never had a good high level understanding of how the whole garbage collection system worked. I was more, I had like some specific thing I wanted to achieve, like, oh, I want to make this thing smaller, or I want to throw these things away when they're not needed anymore, and I need to find a way to do that. But I never designed a garbage collector or architected them or worked on them in any architectural capacity. So that's all been new to me, and I'm working on libjs, and there are many things that I've learned since doing the original garbage collector for libjs that I think we can do a better garbage collector now. But there are so many things that we can do better now, and garbage collection is just one of them. So it's sort of, it's like a yak stack that you're always just picking and choosing which yak to shave, and they never run out. So it's an endless thing, but it's great. Hello, Prinom in Turkey. Matthew said, glad to see another Discord video. They are some of my favorites. Cool. I got to do more of those, because I think at this point we are close enough to getting Discord to actually work. So I'll show you. I did a little bit more on it this morning, and the fields here are now clickable. It's like previously something went wrong and we couldn't click on these. So it's actually now possible to type here. The text shows up in an unpleasant color, but it does work. And once you try to log in, it falls apart because of WebSockets. So I think that will be the next thing to tackle. YukiCat said, is there a giant PDF with all the CSS spec content? I can only seem to find small parts of the spec for things like box sizing and flex. Yeah, unfortunately, after CSS 2.2, the way that the specs are written changed dramatically, and they became, they split them up into like 1,000 little specs instead of having one big CSS spec. And I'm sure that this was very convenient for the people writing specs, and that's how they want to have it. But I really feel like the CSS 2.2 spec was super nice because you have everything in one package, and it's much, much easier to cross-reference because everything is in one big document. But yeah, it doesn't work like that anymore. So you just have to kind of deal with the many, many specs instead. And you can find a big list of them here if you want to learn about which one is which. Yeah, so I think in general, like, there are many things I would do differently if I were in charge of these things, but I'm not in charge of these things, so I just accept them the way that they are, and try to work with the situation as it is. That said, given that today we are celebrating Linus joining TC39 to standardize ECMAScript, you know, maybe this sort of frustration is something that could make its way into CSS standardization one day. Who knows? Let's see. Stuffy says, are you planning on completely rethinking some parts of how an operating system is typically made? For example, running the operating system on its own core, or maybe getting rid of multi-user login, etc. I don't have a plan for anything, one way or the other. But in general, when it comes to rethinking things, that is not typically what I do. SerenityOS is very much a project that sort of takes the established good ideas that have been time tested and are known to be good, and then we just take all the good ideas that other people had and we combine them into a nice system. So it's not very much about rethinking for the sake of rethinking. That is not something I'm personally interested in. Prenom says, I love how you dive into things you have little experience on. For example, in one of your videos, you jumped into building a VM for JavaScript. Yes, because we needed to have JavaScript. And in retrospect, see, that was a pretty good idea, you know? And at the time, I was so nervous because I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to do a crappy job of this, and it's not going to be it's not going to be as beautiful as the JavaScript engines I'd worked on at Apple. And then my friends from Apple are going to watch the video and they're going to make fun of me for not making a good enough JavaScript engine. All of these silly things I was thinking at the time, but at the same time, I just pushed forward because I thought, you know what? Like, it's not that hard. It can't be that hard to build JavaScript engine, right? Like, we just start here and then we work outwards, and it worked out. So that's pretty good. El Cocos with the golden yak says, what is missing in Serenity before you would try to switch to it? Multi-core performance and stability are probably two things. So I compile things all day, every day, and I need it to compile fast. And right now, compiling stuff on Serenity is like many X slower than doing it on Linux. So it is kind of a deal breaker. You know, like the building Serenity takes quite a while, and I don't want to add a 4x or 5x or whatever multiplier to that. Let's see. Demostanis says, I skipped your message. Damn. Okay, I don't know where it is. That you should review pull requests in live in future. Okay. Well, we've done that on occasion here on Office Hours. Usually if people drop a pull request link in the chat, then we can have a look. Let's see. Hashem says, do you think picking up popular websites and working on them till they're semi-perfect is a good way to progress Ladybird? Think of it as making the common case work, kind of like Discord, but more broad. Yes, I do kind of think so, because if you come at building a browser from the sort of bottom-up specification-driven perspective, and you implement, like, you take one spec and you implement everything to the letter, make every little feature and edge case work, and then you move on to the next spec. It's going to take a very, very long time before you have anything usable or useful, because the web as it exists out there tends to use mostly the same features. They just combine them in different ways, and then there's a small set of unique stuff here and there, but for the most part, websites like to use, you know, CSS blocks, inlines, flexbox, grid, increasingly more popular, and positioned, absolute and fixed position elements, stuff like that. And I feel like it's much more fruitful and much more fun to work on the things that 95% of websites use and then get those things to work really well, so that you have a browser that can display large parts of the web, and then you sort of iteratively move forward on the little details and edge cases. But you build something that can handle the majority of content in a decent enough way first. To me, that seems more satisfying, I guess. And it's just more fun to work on a browser that actually displays something when you go to a website. But that's not to say that there's anything wrong with the spec approach. If somebody finds that satisfying, then I'm perfectly happy to have them implement specs that way. It doesn't matter what motivates a person to work on something. Like, if we are implementing things correctly and moving forward, then it's all good. Let's see. Adam Strel says, what's your opinion on PCI Express being a closed specification? I'm trying to write my own kernel. Thank you for inspiring me. Sure. And it annoys me that all I have available are open source implementations of it. I don't have an opinion other than, I guess, that sucks. I think in general, like, closed specs are obviously sucky compared to an openly available spec, but it's not the end of the world, If you look at something like these folks who are now making Linux available on M1 and M2 Mac computers, they don't have specs, and they're making it work. And I think there's something kind of fun about working in an environment without specs too. It's less straightforward, less easy, but I think much in the same way that I view the web as something that just exists and we have to accept it the way that it is because we can't really change it. It's not within our power to change it, right? We kind of have to make peace with the lack of specs for different hardware and things like that as well, and then work within the constraints that we live in. But yes, it does suck, but not much we can do about it. Let's see. Akrob says, what do your old colleagues from Apple think about Serenity? So I have heard from a whole bunch of people, and they all like it. And it's possible that somebody does not like it, but they have not gotten in touch with me to let me know that they don't. So everybody that I've spoken with thinks that it's cool, and they like the browser, they like what we're doing, and I think that's very sweet. And it's a bit sad, but like because of the way Apple contracts work, many or I think probably basically all of them are unable to hack on Serenity if they wanted to. So many people have told me that it's something that they are not happy about because they would like to hack on it. But as it stands, they're not able to do that. Ooh, Milan with the super chat. Thank you so much for saying, well, hello, friends. Well, hello, Milan. Let me just get back to where I was. Oh, wait, I was here. Sarfaraz says, are there some developers from Chrome, Safari, or Firefox developing Ladybird? So about Safari, I don't think so because of what I just said. There is at least one Chrome person hanging around, possibly in this live stream. I know there have been multiple people from both Chrome and Firefox hacking on Serenity at various points in time, but I don't know what the current status is if they are active. DataPie says, hey, I just came here after reading your blog, How I Make a Living, and checked your YouTube to sub and then saw you live. Indeed, I am live. Thank you for coming by, and I hope you found the blog interesting. It was definitely something that felt kind of awkward to write about. If anybody hasn't seen it, I wrote in detail about how I make a living on what I do with SerenityOS. And I was very apprehensive or hesitating if I should post it, but I'm glad that I did, because many people told me that they really appreciated getting this kind of information, because it's not something that's much talked about, and I'm in a bit of an unusual position here as well, trying something that not many people do. So getting some more details into that picture was apparently helpful to people. And my favorite thing was that that a few people said that they were considering doing the same thing. So I was able to answer a bunch of questions that they didn't even know that they had. So that was cool. Anyway, thank you for coming by and subbing to the channel. Kimuchi Film says, except for the Serenity, do you have any categories that you are interested in? And if you were to start a new project, what would it be? To be honest with you, right now, I don't know that I want to start anything new outside of Serenity. I feel like there are so many balls in the air, and way more balls than I can juggle myself. So there's hundreds of other people helping juggle all the balls. And I think I'm happy in this environment for now, and I'm gonna be for a long time, because it's gonna take a long time to get all these balls in the right place, you know. Matthew said, I've seen this suggested in the comments of some of your videos, but have you thought about doing a video where you just go through and fix a lot of FIXMEs? Yes, I have thought about that. And I even, last time somebody told me, or last time somebody asked this question, I made a note that said FIXME video. And I put it here, and I put it on my monitor, and it must have fallen down. But now that you ask about it, I just picked it up. Because yes, it's something that I always forget about, and seems like I forgot about it again. But it's not a bad idea to make a FIXME video. Although typically with the videos, I really just go for something that seems like it's going to be interesting, and I hesitate to make a video like not even knowing beforehand, like, oh, we're just going to fix FIXMEs. But maybe that would be interesting, and maybe I shouldn't overthink it. I'm probably overthinking. Kuberlog, the cyber ranging hacker, said, what would you think of a Serenity-like project but in Lisp? I don't know. I would think good luck with that, I guess. The Undefined says, it would be very nice if you make a tour video on the garbage collector and how it works. Excellent idea. That should be a thing that we should do. Now that I've just told you about my super lame ability to remember the things that people suggest to me, I'm just gonna make a note of that in a text file here, so it can't fall off my screen. GC tour video. That's a really good idea, because I know that a lot of people don't know how the garbage collector works, and it's really quite simple. It just needs a bit of explanation if you're not familiar with that type of stuff. Let's see. Tui says, someone from SeaMonkey 2. Cool. Devashish says that the yak in the wallpaper is cute. I agree. It is the official Yaktoberfest yak from this year's Yaktoberfest shirt, which, is it still available? How do I find it? Yak. Wait, it's gone? No, load more. Why would you force me to click load more? Yes, it is the official Hacktoberfest yak. Very cute little fella. Let's see. Woo Woo Wah says, if you don't mind, could you explain the whole LibWeb stack of how a resource like an image gets downloaded till it gets displayed? So that is a very large thing to explain, which is why I'm working on a presentation video explaining how this and more stuff in the web engine works. So please stay tuned, and that's probably going to be a series of videos, actually, because it's a lot of different things to talk about. But yeah, that will absolutely be part of that. So Jeje said, Andreas, how do you feel about extensions for Ladybird/browser? If you would like to see it, would you then prefer web extension support or a custom extension format? I would prefer that we do the standard, I guess, web extensions spec, whatever that spec thing is, so that we can use the same extensions that already exist. I think that would be really cool. And, you know, it's just another spec to implement, really. It doesn't seem valuable to invent our own thing, because then we just dramatically shrink the number of available extensions. And I know that people are very committed to their favorite extensions. And I guess I'm no different. Like, I have a bunch of extensions that I use, that I depend on, and I really like having. So making those available in a new browser that we're making, it seems like a no-brainer. By the way, YouTube thinks I should play you guys an ad, but I'm just not going to do that. Demo Stanis says, could you please take a look at 15.877? Sure, 15.877. Add macros to test utilities. Okay. So the state of that is that it's waiting. No, it's waiting for review. Okay. So you're adding macros to do what? Add macros to test utilities. That's like a very saying nothing commit message. That is my first comment on this. Okay, so then these are macros to test command line utilities, I guess. So let's see how they get used. So just off the top of my head, I guess it seems to me like this doesn't seem like something I would do in C++. If I wanted to test command line utilities, I would write a shell script. Doing this in C++ seems like it introduces a ton of extra awkwardness and friction, and I'm not sure what the benefit would be. Like, if we look at this program here, it's essentially a shell script. You've just made a bunch of macros for yourself so you don't have to make a shell script. So if this is sort of how it's intended to be used, I think this is very overkill, and it would be better to make a shell script that has maybe a couple of helpers or something, because command line utilities, the way that you script command line utilities is with a shell script, typically. So those are my thoughts on that. KS says, just to let you know, pretty much everything you do is interesting. Well, I try to keep what I do on the channel interesting, at least. I promise you, I do a lot of uninteresting things when I'm not recording. Stanis said, does YouTube prevent messages with links from sending? Yes, YouTube, sometimes they just like filter out you try to post a URL in the chat and it feels like maybe you have a 25% chance that the message will actually show up, which is super irritating, and it's not something that I can control. There is no checkbox or anything like that for me to affect that. So typically what people do is that if it's like a pull request number, then they just post the number and say like PR and the number, or, you know, issue number, and find some other way to sort of describe what it is that I need to open. And yeah, it sucks, but there's nothing I can do about that with YouTube. The literal definition of bruh says, what is the worst way you can think of / saw of centering a div? Well, I've seen people do it with tables a lot. And I think probably today, like the web developers of today would probably find a lot of the things we did in the 90s objectionable. But I learned HTML in the 90s before CSS was even available. So we centered everything with tables. We did everything with tables. So to me, it just looks old, but not objectionable. But I think, yeah, like that's probably the weirdest things that I've seen, like people using tables to achieve every imaginable layout. Initor says, could we get monthly updates of Yacht like for SerenityOS? We probably could. We've had that part of the update video in the past. We've had stuff about Yacht, and the fact that it was not in there this month was a bit of an oversight. That's on me, my bad. I will try to make sure that we get an update in the next monthly update. Let's see. Alex said, hey Andreas, being that you're obviously a big proponent of open source, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts regarding the lawsuit against GitHub relating to Copilot. Keep up the awesome work. So I'm not familiar enough with the details of the lawsuit to have an opinion about it. But speaking generally, it seems to me very, very sketchy what GitHub is doing with Copilot. I'm surprised that the lawyers at GitHub would have greenlit this whole thing, and because I mean they obviously have tons of lawyers at a place like that, and the fact that they thought that this was going to be okay is interesting, and it makes me wonder where is this whole thing going. But I don't know enough about the details to really have an opinion about the case worth hearing. Daniela said, hello, could you please say, do you use any task management tool? No, not really, other than GitHub issues and post-it notes that I forget about because they fall off my screen. I don't use any task management tools. Elab says, speaking of Yaktoberfest, did you get nice contributions from it or spammy PRs? We got a handful of spammy PRs that we swiftly closed and marked as spam. And I think some people did a bunch of like actual useful PRs and got shirts because of it. But I feel like those people would probably have done those PRs anyway. I'm not sure anybody was motivated by the shirts. And I'm not sure anybody came to us just because of Hacktoberfest. So I remain skeptical about the utility of Hacktoberfest as anything other than a meme. But, you know, I'm not going to get in the way of I'm not going to get between a man and his shirt. It is what it is. Vuvuva says, sorry for being a normie. Would you explain what is a yak and yakbaiting? So a yak refers to yak shaving, and yakbaiting is when you try to bait somebody else into shaving your yak. And we have a extremely nerdy explanation website where our resident Germans have in detail explained all of the jokes around yaks and yakbaiting, yaksplaining, and so on. So check that out if you want to learn the specifics. Prenam says, how did I forget that he was born on the 32nd of September? That is correct. I was born on the 32nd of September. Linus says that he learned web development by making tables in Thunderbird's editor and copying the HTML source. One of us. Yeah. I've done things like that too. Definitely. I remember when the first version of Macromedia Dreamweaver came out, I remember like using it to sort of sketch out some layouts and then opening it in Notepad, the result, and sort of trying to figure out how the heck did it do this layout, and learning layout tricks that way. Good times. Sky Rising says, the worst thing about tables is how they are specified. Dude, you are so right. They are so weakly specified. Like even by modern CSS standards, like CSS tables are ill specified. There's the tables 3 spec, but not ready for implementation, you know? And I heard from somebody on the Chrome team a couple of weeks ago that that is like, oh, it's a good start, but this isn't good enough yet. And I guess that's why it says not ready for implementation. But yeah, like there isn't a good authority on how to implement tables, which kind of sucks, because it means that we have to fall back to the old see what other browsers do technique of implementing it. But at the same time, what else are we supposed to do? Not show tables? Because that's kind of what we currently do, and it's unfortunate. So we have to do something. That said, you know, there's still parts of the HTML spec that deal with table processing model. Like we do still need to implement that so that we get like the grid that is then an input into the CSS algorithms. Like this stuff isn't implemented at all in LibWeb, and this is well specified, so it's something we should be doing if anybody is interested. This, by the way, is an example of yakbaiting. Jaja says, Andreas, would love to see a behind the scenes what goes into one of your video recordings, like equipment, recording, editing, etc. Basically a video of you making a video. You know, I could do that. That might be fun. It might be fun to do one time. Let's see. Demostanis said, Andrew Castor had said on Discord while talking about being able to test utilities, I mean, you can write a monster shell script if you like. I'd rather write tests using libtest. Okay, well, I don't really agree with Andrew Castor, so we're going to have to talk to him about this, I guess. Let's see. Electric Milk says, I learned HTML from Microsoft FrontPage, included in Office 2003 on my first IBM Windows XP PC. It lets you make HTML documents like a Word document and see the source. That was definitely a thing that I did as well. Not with that version of FrontPage, but earlier ones. I think I got the first version of FrontPage, whenever that was. It was pretty early. It was on Windows 95 times. I think at least I had it running on Windows 95. Beefreddle says, that's some serious leave a Vim in insert mode baiting. Yes. Yes, it is. Mahmoud says, is there any room for a non-C++ developer to contribute to Serenity, Yacht, or Ladybird? If yes, where's the place to jump in? The place to jump in is anywhere. So the same thing I tell everybody when they are interested in hacking on any of our projects is to just build the system and then mess around with it until you find something that annoys you, and then try to figure out what you can do to make it better. And it can be anything, you know? And I promise you that if you spend 5 minutes using the thing, then you will find something annoying, or something you think could be better. And then you sort of just take it from there and try to figure out, okay, well, how does this thing work? And how can I change how it behaves? And don't worry so much about what kind of developer you are. You know, you're not a non-C++ developer. If you're a developer, you're a developer. And languages are just things that we can drift in and out of as we need them to solve our problems. So the place to jump in, anywhere. Lickspin says, pull request 15919. All right, let's check that out. Klook. Update tab widget to include modified param for each tab and apply to pixel paint. Okay, this makes pixel paint window look through all tabs for its own modified flag. Undo stack modification has been consolidated to helper functions, cleaning up inconsistency. Wow, that was a really hard to parse sentence. Okay, so what are you doing here? You're adding a modified bool to tab widget, which allows applications with multiple tab interfaces to track modifications per tab, not just if the entire window has been modified. Is this a good abstraction? Is this a good abstraction? This feels like a very arbitrary abstraction to me. Like to say that a tab is modified. Does it make sense for a tab to be modified? What does pixel paint do here? And then update window modified to look at all tabs. So then you're just iterating, or not iterating, you're checking if what does update modified do? Okay, this is very spaghetti-like, but it's not your fault. Okay. So I don't love this abstraction because a tab widget is not the only thing in the world that can it's not the only way to represent like multiple files being open in a program. And it seems to me like there should be some other type of object that manages all of the open files. It doesn't feel like it should be a tab widget that's in charge of this, but like some kind of session object, or not a session, like I don't know, some kind of object feels like it should hold a list of all of the open documents in image in Pixel Paint, and then that thing can tell you like, oh, I have one or more modified documents, right? Making it a job of making it a responsibility of tab widget feels very arbitrary. So you're just like delegating this responsibility to an arbitrary GUI widget instead of having a centralized location where you centralize the application state, if that makes sense. So I think what I would suggest is building some kind of thing in Pixel Paint that keeps track of what's open, has pointers to the widget, for the relevant widgets for all of these things, like the image editor and so on. And then you would derive the modified state for the window from the list of open documents. Yeah, I think that would be my suggestion. Mike Ackers says, does universal paperclips work in Ladybird? I don't know. I don't know what that is even. And it is 5:06, so I gotta go. But thank you all very much for coming to office hours, and thank you for actually giving me all of these to-do items that I need to actually dig into. So video about making a video. I gotta put that in there. So yes, thanks for coming to office hours. Thanks for all the super chats. Thank you, Peon501, for gifting 5 memberships. That is awesome. Let's see who gets them. That's so cool. Thanks, Peon, for hooking up the community. And congrats on the gift subs. Indeed. Yeah, thanks for the super chats, for all the comments, questions. And if you end up working on SerenityOS, Ladybird, Yacht, or anything else fun this weekend, we're all hanging out on Discord. So come chat, share screenshots of what you're working on, all that stuff. And happy hacking. And I will see you all next time. Bye.